she said, Lisa, I don't even know how to tell you this, but she said, the bottom has fallen out and I don't have the legal freedom to tell y'all what happened, but I lost that baby. I just remember putting the phone down and going, God, I can't do this. He said, stand. Lisa, stand and lean. I was in the process of adopting a little girl named Anna Price. And I had been in the process with her the entire pregnancy of her mama. Her mama's name is Marie. And I just loved Marie as much as I loved her unborn baby girl. Marie is a hardcore crack addict and a prostitute. And by the grace of God, she chose not to abort her baby, even though she had no idea who the daddy was. It was one of her Johns. And then by the grace of God, she met me and decided I was supposed to be Anna Price's mother. And I was at every single doctor's appointment. And I spent Christmas a couple of years ago in a crack house with Marie because when I was with her, she used less. And because I'm older, I became a mother figure for her. And I mean, I loved that kid. And I told all my friends, do not give me baby gifts. Do not throw parties for me. Some of you who may have been in an adoption process yourself or know people who are in an adoption like that, it's a very high risk adoption. It was a very high risk pregnancy. The doctor said it was unlikely that Anna Price would actually live because of the hardcore drug use. But, you know, month after month, she kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. But I still said, y'all don't give me any baby gifts. I really won't know until about a week before she's born if I actually get to bring her home to Tennessee. And 5 days before I was supposed to go pick her up, the adoption agency called me and they said, Lisa, it's unbelievable, but every single paper has been signed. Even the state where Marie lived, they have agreed with the state of Tennessee. The only person who's legally allowed to bring Anna Price home from the hospital is you. They said, you can go ahead and get everything ready. You can go ahead and buy the crib. She's coming home with you. Her name is legally Anna Price Harper. And I got off the phone, and I don't know if you've ever carried a dream for a long, long time, and it finally comes true, and it's just like, like this weight comes off you. And I just kind of collapsed on the couch and began to just bawl crying, happy tears, you know. I was just like, I can't believe it. After all these months of kind of holding my breath and all those years of not thinking I was good enough to be a mom, thinking I was too damaged to be a mama, I was like, oh my goodness, in less than a week, I'm going to have a baby girl in the upstairs bedroom. I was just undone. And so I called my mama. I called 2 or 3 of my best friends, and I could hardly speak. I was so excited. And about 30 minutes after I got that phone call, there was a knock at the door. And it was the UPS man, and he handed me this big box, and I saw on the return address it was from a friend of mine in Atlanta, and I sat down on the couch and cut it open and then just went, oh my goodness, because there was a miniature from 0 to 6 months mink coat in the box. My friend's husband has done extremely well. And she wrote me a note and she said, I know you told us not to bring you gifts or send you anything for the baby because it's been so precarious. But she said, I saw this week and I just thought that's for Anna Price. And she said, Lisa, I just couldn't resist. And I thought the white will represent the fact that she's innocent, that generational sin and bondage will end with you being her mama. And I held that little coat and I just started crying again because I thought nobody's ever sent me a mink coat. And then about 30 minutes after that, the phone rang again. I saw on caller ID, it was the adoption agency. And I thought, oh, they've forgotten something. I need to scan something and email it to them. And I said, hey. And as soon as I heard my agent's voice, I knew that was not the case because her voice was just so heavy. And she said, Lisa, I don't even know how to tell you this. But she said, the bottom has fallen out and I don't have the legal freedom to tell y'all what happened. But I lost that baby and basically lost that little mama that I had just grown to love almost like a daughter. And it didn't end pretty. the bottom fell out of that story. There is no pretty bow like on that video. And I sat back down on the couch and I thought, God, I can't do this. I have waited too long. My heart is too broken. You picked the wrong girl for a story like this. And I don't know how long I sat there crying, and they weren't happy tears anymore. Before my phone rang again, I saw it was my mama. And I thought, oh, good night. I don't even know how to tell my mom that I'm not going to bring Anna Price home. But as soon as I picked up the phone, my mama started talking before I started talking. And she said, baby, I so hate to ruin your celebration today. But she said, remember a couple of days ago when I told you about that ongoing bladder infection I had? And I said, yeah, Mom, I remember. I was afraid she'd be able to tell I'd been crying. And she said, well, we just got the test results back. The doctor just called me, and it's actually not a bladder infection at all. I have cancer, and it's stage 4. It's metastasized into 4 major organs. And she said, honey, it's just not good. And she said, I need you to pray for me. And so I didn't even tell her about Anna Price at that point. I just started praying for my mama. We were both crying. We got off the phone. I thought I'll call her later when I'm stronger and she's stronger. And I'll tell her that she's not going to have a granddaughter. We have 3 grandsons in our family, but no granddaughters. And then about 30 minutes after that, my phone rang again, and it was my daddy. My parents divorced when I was 5, and I love my daddy. He was a very, very gruff man. He was very abusive when I was younger, but he tendered in his old age, really loved Jesus. He was kind of like a miniature John Wayne. And I thought, oh, good night. I don't know how to tell this to my dad. I hadn't called him yet and told him that Anna Price was coming home. And so I thought he'll be able to tell, because I don't even know if I can talk. But again, he started talking, even though my dad was kind of a monosyllabic man. He started talking before I did, and he said, baby, the cancer is back. My dad successfully, we thought, had battled colon cancer for a couple of years. And he said, I just came back from the surgeon's office, and he said, honey, I need you to pray for me, because he told me that it is now in both lungs, and the surgeon just gave me 2 months to live. And he said, it's going to be okay. I don't want you to worry about it, but I just wanted to tell you she could pray. And I honestly don't remember the end of that phone call. I don't remember if I prayed for my dad or not. I just remember putting the phone down and going, God, I can't do this. This is too hard. And y'all, I heard like 2 words from the Lord. He said, stand. Lisa, stand and lean. I've got you. I've got this. Let me carry you. That was 2 weeks before I got the phone call about Missy, my baby girl, Missy. She was actually my 3rd adoption attempt. I can't imagine life without her. She's not my hope. Jesus is my hope. But how kind that he gave me a kid who looks almost exactly like me. You know, most people can't tell she's adopted. 2 weeks after I committed to adopt Missy, 2 weeks later, my mom had major surgery. And she went in, she had a 5-hour surgery, and the surgeons came out and they said, we think we've gotten all the cancer. We believe as a result of this surgery, your mom has a really good shot at living past this. And then 3 days later, when she was still in the hospital and her health was declining, the surgeons met with my sister and I again, and they said, we actually can't explain why her health is declining. But if something doesn't turn around, her numbers are getting lower and lower and lower. And even though we think we got the cancer, we also think y'all need to prepare for your mama's death. And my sister and I were keeping vigil at her bedside. They had intubated her. She wasn't speaking much. She was mostly out of it. But 4 days after the surgery, she opened her eyes and she kind of whispered, I need to see your father. My sister looked at me because our dad, our stepfather, Dad Angel, had died a year before. And we thought she was just groggy from the meds, and she thought Daddy was still alive. And so my sister is not as gabby as I am, and she thinks I'm closer to Mama, so she was like, it's on you. You got to tell her. And so I leaned down and I said, Mama, I am so sorry, but Daddy died last year. I said, remember Daddy died in the hospital this time last year. And she said, not that Daddy. She said, I want to see your father. I want to see Everett. You know, my mom and my dad divorced when I was 5 years old, and it was as ugly a divorce as I've ever been witness to. A lot of abuse, extreme anger, huge animosity. I think they had spoken maybe 2 sentences in 40 years. My mother and my father pretty much hated each other. And so I wasn't even sure how to respond. I said, okay, Mama. And I called Dad. This is the daddy who had colon cancer that metastasized to lung cancer. And I said, Daddy, you know, we're in the hospital with Mama, and she's asking for you. And he said, all right, I'll be there in an hour. My daddy comes swaggering down that hospital corridor, and I told you, he's like a mini John Wayne. He's just little, 5'7", 160 pounds, soaking wet. I got Mama's jeans. She's actually little too, but anyway. He comes swaggering down the hallway, and he's a quiet man, kind of a taciturn man. And he came up to my sister and I. He had called us when he got there, so we were outside Mama's hospital room. And he said, I love you girls. Your mom and I need some privacy. Y'all stay out here. I'll be back in a minute. And he goes in, and I turned to my sister and I said, what if he puts a pillow over it? Like, I mean, I didn't know, you know, they hadn't seen each other in years and years and years. They hated each other, and I thought, oh, crud, you know, we're going to be on Jerry Springer. And he didn't come out for about 30 minutes, and I really was concerned. We didn't know what was happening. He came out about 30 minutes later, and he said, I love you girls. Your mama's going to be okay. And I'll be back here tomorrow. And he just walked away. My sister and I were like, and we walk into Mom's hospital room, and y'all, she is sitting up in bed. There's color in her cheeks. And this is as close to verbatim as I remember it, what my mother said. She said, your father prayed for me. He anointed me with oil, and I'm going to be fine. And I was just like, I mean, I thought they've given her that medicinal pot, because I just can't even believe this. And y'all, that was April of 2012 until my father died. My daddy Harper died February 13th, 2013. And until my daddy died, every single day, he and my mama talked on the phone, and she saw him. They saw each other 2 or 3 times a week. It wasn't romantic. They knew each other at their worst when they were kids, and God redeemed their story. And I was just amazed by it. That year for Christmas, I went home to Orlando, and Mama said, I've invited your dad to be here. And we have this big family Christmas where all my aunts, my first cousins, and my uncle come in, and we were at my Aunt Darlene's house that year. And I thought, you know, Mama has kind of romanticized this, and she and Daddy are friends now, but I thought our family is not going to accept Daddy, because he was mean and really abusive when I was younger, and, you know, they're protecting their sister. And so I was nervous. And Daddy comes walking in. I'll never forget it, y'all. It was a few weeks before he ended up being bedridden with hospice. He comes walking in. He's still got a little bit of John Wayne swagger. But when he opened the door at my Aunt Darlene's, every single one of my aunts, my uncle, and all of my first cousins ran and greeted him like a heroic soldier returning from the war. I mean, all of them lined up to hug my daddy. And I thought, that's it. That is it. I've waited 40 years. I had stopped praying that my mama and my daddy would ever reconcile or forgive each other. And I saw it. You know, she's the very last person with my father before he died. She was holding his hand, reading the Bible to my daddy. Redemption happens. Some of us just have to learn to wait, to stand in the promises. He is good and he does good. And ultimately, everything will work out for our good and his glory.